Good afternoon, everyone. This is Rick Emery. We're doing another webinar in the series. Today, we are very fortunate to have the ChemResponder series. As many of you know, this was originally created after the Japanese radiation disaster in 2011, and they created the RAD-Responder network, and it was so successful that FEMA and their CBRN office had requests to do something with chemical responses, and so ChemResponder network was launched in 2018. And today we have the two instrumental gentlemen. Sean Dooling is with Chainbridge Technologies as a project manager just outside of Washington, D.C. And Dante Steller is the CBRN program manager for DHS, the FEMA response director at CBRN office. So I've got the control turned over right now to Sean. So I'm going to let him take over right from here.
Thanks, Rick, for that introduction. This is Dante Steller. As Rick said, I'm with the FEMA CBRN office out in DC. I am the federal point of contact for the ChemResponder portion of the CBRNResponder suite of tools. I want to first thank Rick for allowing us to be part of this webinar session. Wish we could be doing this in person out at the conference, but given the situation that we're in today with the COVID-19 response, it's unfortunate that we could not be there in person, but we welcome this opportunity to still deliver this presentation and this webinar to you all. And I thank you all for joining us today. So again, my name is Dante Steller. Sean Dooling is with Chainbridge Technologies. They are the developers of the ChemResponder tool. I'm just going to go ahead and run through some slides here real quick, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Sean, who's going to take us through a demo of the tool itself and really get into the meat and potatoes of the tool. So if there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and post them in the chat there. We'll try to address them as we go along if anything comes up, but certainly we'll try to make time at the end of the presentation as well for questions after we're finished. So with that, I'll just go ahead and go through the slides.
An announcement. So everybody, you have the ability to send questions. I will monitor the questions and I will forward them to them or interrupt them if we need to address something. But just a point there, please put questions in the questions section there and I'll get them, but not comments. You can put the comments in the chat later. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. So I'll go ahead and go through these slides here. ChemResponder, it is the follow-on responder tool to RAD-Responder, as Rick mentioned at the beginning. RAD-Responder was developed in a response, after-action response to Fukushima, to develop a data sharing, common operating picture tool for the whole community to share data from various organizations during an event in real-time ground truth data. So it's a free whole community system sponsored by the FEMA CBRN office, for the collection, management, and sharing of chemical data in this instance. FEMA is the primary sponsor, but it is we do have partners within the federal government who do contribute to the tool as well. In particular, on the RAD side with DOE and EPA, ChemResponder, we have the Technical Support Working Group out of DOD, TISWIG, if anyone is familiar with that. They've been partnering with us on it, but we also have a steering committee, which is made up of various different representatives from federal agencies such as DHS S&T, the Chemical Security Analysis Center, CSAC, out in Aberdeen, and CWMD out of DHS. So quite a few federal partners, and we have some state and local partners on that committee as well. And that committee is used to drive kind of the priorities for the system, get some feedback from SMEs, and kind of guide our development of where the tool is going. We really developed this tool in response, as Rick said, the signal demand from the users of the RAD-responder tool to develop something similar for ChemResponse. So that was the genesis of this tool. It's been out there for about a year and a half now, and it's been pretty well received. So, you know, it's going to be a continuing development of the tool to further improve it and increase functionality based off the feedback of the user community themselves. So Sean, if you want to go ahead to the next slide there. Thanks. So again, this slide is just a little recap of where we've been. 2013 Fukushima, that was the impetus for the RAD-responder tool. The RAD-responder tool was developed and released, was out there being used and trained on, so on and so forth. And then in 2016, which was a significant event for the RAD-responder tool, it was incorporated into the national level document or doctrine, the NUC-RAD incident annex of the FIOP. So it's codified in there as the national standard for use in collecting and sharing data during a significant NUC-RAD event. Based off of feedback from the RAD-responder user community, we developed the ChemResponder tool in 2018 and released it. Obviously, with a focus on chemical incidents, but built off of the same platform primarily as the RAD-responder tool, with quite a few of the same functional premises and data collection and sharing capabilities. We moved into 2019. We see this tool moving into a more holistic CBRNResponder site, and we do have a CBRNResponder site up. That is still being developed, but it will house the RAD, Chem, and eventually BioResponder, as well as a portal to the IMAC modeling capability, which is also run out of the FEMA CBRN office. Next slide, Sean. So as I said, the CBRNResponder tool, it's going to be a unified hazard portal to access the other tools. It's all these tools come to the end user free of cost, sponsored by FEMA and its partners. The tool itself will be a single sign-on platform, so you only need one username, one account, username and password, logged in either through the CBRNResponder site or the individual Chem, RAD, or Bio sites. You can have access to all three, but only requires one account, again, with one username and password to utilize any of the tools. Next slide. So just a little high-level stuff about the tool. It's accessible via the web, obviously, tablets and smartphones. The mobile app is primarily for the data collection piece of the tool. So that is where the responders who are out there in the field taking the measurements will be using their mobile device to collect the data from their instruments, whether that be directly through an API, API-enabled device, as Sean will get into a little bit more in his demonstration, or by hand. And then there's the web portal where the mobile devices upload the data collected to the web portal, to incident command, decision makers, so on and so forth. So everybody who is partnered on that event is seeing the data come in to the event via the web portal in real time as that data is collected, for everybody to view and to make decisions on based upon what's the ground truth data that is being collected. Next slide. So again, yeah, the ground truth data, as I mentioned, an assessment, you can upload the chemical measurement data, chemical readings, spectra, sit reps. We've developed this functionality for sit reps. So chemical incidents obviously happen a lot more often throughout any given year. Very small incidents that HAZMAT teams respond to, to very large incidents as compared to a radiological event. So sit reps are a way to, maybe you're not going to stand up a large event for a small hazmat incident, but you want to record that data. The sit rep portion allows for the responders to do that, so that data, those responses are recorded and maybe could provide some value to analytics later on, and just to inform where responses may be clustering or things like that. So a lot of uses to the sit reps, very short form, and we could talk about that a little bit more in the presentation, but just a little bit on that. There's a view records on the map and in the tables, and you could also access record histories as well through the website. Next slide. So I won't go into the map because I know too much, because I know Sean is going to do a much deeper dive on it than myself. But as you can see there on the slide, all kinds of different features for the user, filters, different layers. There is the ability to utilize a drawing tool to set different hazard zones or operational zones if you would like. There is the ability to import different shape files or KML files for importing models that may be created in Aloha or IMAC, or maybe from NARAC. So there's that capability to import the model so that you could overlay the ground truth data as compared to the model that you generated. And then as the ground truth data is coming in, obviously adjust your models accordingly. Next slide. Thresholds. Thresholds are something that was requested. So you can see the icons there on the map have different colorings. The thresholds, what that does is it allows you to, via a coloring scheme, set the thresholds as to the severity of the measurement being taken for any different, for a particular chemical which you may have in mind. So you can see red is the highest there on the screen. So if somebody takes a reading and it's higher than the threshold that you have predetermined within your organization space, then it's going to appear red on the map. And then going down the spectrum there, it goes from orange to yellow to green, again, depending on those predetermined thresholds which are set by your organization. Next slide. Equipment. Equipment is a lot of functionality here. You can maintain equipment inventory, track who it's assigned to, track maintenance, calibration, purchase information, serial numbers, all that stuff. And then you can then maintain that data in a database within the ChemResponder tool, so that it's easily accessible during an event to know who's assigned what equipment, what teams may be assigned what equipment. But I'll let Sean, when he does his demo, explain a little bit more on that. There's a lot of functionality there. It makes the tool a little bit more robust in a sense of managing your data and your equipment inventories. Next slide. APIs for equipment. So I touched on this a little bit briefly earlier. We worked with the technical support working group out of DoD. This API development allows us to, we've created APIs, generic APIs, so that manufacturers of different chemical detection equipment can talk to these APIs, their equipment can talk to these APIs, and data from responders out in the field that's being collected can be telemetered directly to the mobile device and then uploaded to the website without having to hand jam any type of data into the system via your mobile device. We understand that this improves the efficiency and accuracy of the data, minimizes the chance for maybe hand jamming, missing a decimal point, or putting a decimal point in the wrong spot. We know HAZMAT teams and so on are out there. The folks who are out there taking these readings are probably going to be suited up in a lot of protective equipment, and hand jamming may not be the best way to collect the data. So we want to try to make it as seamless as possible to allow detection equipment to talk to the ChemResponder network directly. Next slide. Field teams and tracking. So the system allows you to set your teams. If you have teams and personnel within those teams, and the equipment that is attached to those teams, maybe that's all predetermined. If you have that predetermined, you can set that within the system, so that way during an event, who is on what team. You could switch personnel from teams to teams within the system. The equipment that's attached to those teams, as I said, and you could send assignments directly to those team members from the site. So say you want team X team to proceed to a specific location and take certain readings for a certain amount of time, if possible. You could do that. They get notified on their mobile device, and then once the assignment is complete, they can notify the incident commander. Tracking field teams, Sean, if you back up just real quick, you should also track field teams and personnel in real time. So this is, Sean will get into this, on the mobile device, there's the capability for the responder to allow for tracking to occur while they're downrange taking readings. It's again, if the responder himself so chooses to do so, and it allows you to see where each data point was taken, and also the path that responder has taken while downrange doing their measurements and so on. Next slide. So alerting, it's kind of a little bit what I talked about as far as the severity thresholds. So if you do enter into a certain threshold of severity, or you exceed it, you can be alerted to that you're need to back out of the situation that you're in, or the concentration's too high. There is the ability to be alerted of those, depending on chemicals, the chemical and the chemical ID and the thresholds set for that chemical. Also helps for, as I just mentioned, assigning, pushing assignments to team members for notification by text or email to their mobile applications. Next slide. So partnerships, the probably most important piece to the network is the partnerships piece. This whole concept is built on establishing partnerships with any organization as you so choose. So if that be a federal or agency or neighboring jurisdictions, so on and so forth, that those partnerships they could be established, pre-established, and determined what information is going to be shared. It could be all data. It could be only validated data. You can share information on regarding personnel, so on and so forth. But that's the heart and soul, I think, of the tool, is to be able to, the more work that's done in pre-establishing those partnerships up front, when there is that bad day that you have to respond to, it's just a click of a button to bring your partners into an event space to share in real time the data that's being collected. So those partnerships can be created on the fly during an event, but obviously if they're established beforehand, makes the tool a lot much more robust and is really critical in saving time while you're responding to an event, because we all know chem events can happen quickly, and anything in any event, things are moving rapidly. So the more time you could save up front in establishing those partnerships, I think the more robust use you will get out of the tool. Next slide. Facility information. I'll try to speed up here because I don't want to take up too much of Sean's time with the demo, but facility information is one of the things that we really received a lot of feedback on from the response community. Being able to know what facilities are in your area of operation, just to know. So you're responding, maybe you're responding to a fire, but you want to know, that there's a chemical facility, nearby, and what is in that facility, how much of chemicals which are produced there or stored there are on site. Things of that nature. It's not for regulatory purposes at all, just for more situational awareness, more being able to operationalize this type of information for the responder who's going downrange, so they know what they may be running into. They know what may be next door that could reach out and bite them. So I won't go too much into that right now, but Sean will touch on that during the demo. So Sean, you can go ahead and move to the next slide. So again, I touched on some of this stuff, assignments. I won't get into that anymore, but there also is a reports capability to manage different reports that you may want to upload to the site that your organization may utilize. Document management. There's a resource library where we have a lot of different federal level guidance or any type of reference material which you may want to have at your fingertips during a response. It's all there within the resource library. That's a growing piece to this. Documents are added, continually added on an as needed basis. So lots of great information in there. We have what's called the lessons learned library for the ChemResponder piece, which is what we foresee a means for the community to share lessons learned with each other, your partner organizations, or the entire network if you so choose, regarding different aspects of responses to the various HAZMAT or chemical incidences you may encounter throughout the year. And then the HAZMAT incident database, which I'll let Sean get into that more when he does the demo. But it allows, again, for that incident sharing amongst partners, and a means to easily communicate and share information regarding past incidents. Next slide. So that's it for the slide presentation. Again, I don't want to do death by PowerPoint. I know I've already talked here for almost 25 minutes, so I'm going to pass it over to Sean Dooling, who will take us through a quick demo. I know it says questions there on the last slide, but I think we'll get to the demo right now and then open it up for questions maybe at the end. Sean, over to you.
All right, thanks, Dante. So I'm gonna just make sure I got my screen displayed here. Okay, good to go. So Dante gives a great overview of some of the functionality. Like he said, what I'll do is take us into the website itself and highlight some features, try to make this more concrete for you, some of the things that were just described on that deck. So you can see I'm here at ChemResponder.net. I've signed in. ChemResponder.net, by the way, is also where you'd go to request an account. When you go to that page in the upper right corner, there's a request an account button for you where you can get signed up. There's a few things I'm seeing here, obviously, on my dashboard here. So this is the first screen I'm greeted with when I come into the site. I've got an events tile here, and then this tile next to it, this blue one, is our organization space tile. It's got some quick links to some organization elements that I'm going to hit on as I go forward here. Most users are going to spend their time in either the organization space or the event space. So that's primarily what we're going to be focusing on as I go forward. There are some other quick links, of course, on the dashboard here that you might find useful. IMAC in particular, they're a great program that's run out of the FEMA CBRN office. We might be able to touch on them more later. But they provide a lot of modeling assets for any organization across the country that might require some modeling capability. There's links to WISER and ERG and some other resources there. So I'm going to go ahead and start by bringing us to the organization space, like I mentioned. You can use these quick links on the tile here. We've also got the ribbon bar up top that I'm going to be making use of. So I'm going to click on this organization button, zoom in. And this is my organization dashboard. Now, when I talk about an organization in ChemResponder, just to make sure we are on the same page about what we're talking about, an organization would probably typically be like a fire department, for instance, a HAZMAT team on a fire department. It could be a state health agency, or a bureau or an office in a state health agency. It could be a federal organization. It could be a federal component in DHS or EPA, et cetera. You can create organizations however you want them in terms of their scope. But again, when we're talking about organizations, that's what I'm referring to here. So in the organization space, we've got some pages that we can access using our side navigation on the left. And so, for instance, our personnel page is going to show us all the individual responders who are in our organization. You can see here that each row obviously represents a responder. I've got some demo accounts in here, so they're obviously notional individuals. But for each person that's in the organization, they are assigned certain roles depending on the permissions they need to have in the organization space. So somebody who needs administer rights, they might just have all these different permissions in the organization. The administrator obviously has this kind of God's eye view over the organization. And that might be down to somebody who actually doesn't need to do anything in the organization at all. They just need to be able to view information within it, but not be able to edit things. We've also got some default event roles here. I'm going to explain those more when we get into the event space in a moment. Dante also mentioned equipment. So I'm going to go to my equipment page, again, using my side navigation. And this is a capability we've gotten a lot of great feedback on from end users that they find it really useful. A local fire department, for instance, they might just be kind of managing their equipment inventory on an Excel sheet or something. This obviously is a free cloud-hosted tool where they can manage a lot of this equipment information. They can share it with other partners, and I'm going to come to partners in a moment here. But a few things I'll point out about what we can do in the equipment space. You can see the columns here obviously representing the different types of metadata I can capture about each of my instruments that's in a row here. This is obviously a demo organization, so some of these instruments are, notional. They're made up manufacturers and such, but you get the idea. So we have this choose visible columns in the ribbon bar within the table, where I can choose to display other information, other columns that I want to show. So you'll notice that we can track maintenance, for instance. So we can indicate when the last maintenance was performed, when the next maintenance is due. We have a status here. There's all kinds of filtering that we can do as well to sort our table and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit about equipment. Again, if you are responsible for managing this inventory for your organization, you would have that equipment manager role in the organization. That's going to allow you to upload new instruments, edit all the information for your different instrument records. And so our equipment page. When I get into events, what you're going to see is that when you create records in the event, so when I add a multi-gas reading to the event, if I'm doing some spectroscopy, you can pick the instrument that you're using to take those readings in the event. And so that instrument, that equipment, is tied to the data record you've collected in the event space. So it's very easy to see, okay, what instrument was used, what equipment was used to take these readings here. Was it calibrated? Can we trust its output? So that's a handy thing that a lot of users have responded well to. I jumped to our partnerships page in our demo organization. And so you can see here that I've got 3 partners, again, for this demo org. And the columns here are telling us the elements of our organization that they're sharing. So for this one at the bottom here, the Rad Ranger training, you can see that these organizations are sharing facilities with one another. And so Dante talked about how we can upload facilities in our organization space, and we can upload the chemicals that are stored there. So if you have tier 2 information that you'd be interested in being able to manage in ChemResponder, you can share all that facility information with any partners that you elect to. We can share equipment as well. So we see organizations that might be pooling equipment in some way or another, and so they find utility in being able to share their equipment. We can share, obviously, events as well. So in the top one here, we see that these orgs are sharing certain event types with one another. And so I'm going to talk more about events in a moment, but what we're going to see is that by creating these, what we call standing partnerships at the org level, when you create events, you can elect to, at the outset of that event, share the event with your standing partners. So right out of the gate, you know that these other agencies, these other organizations are going to have access to that event, and you can use that shared space to coordinate your response activities. I'll go to facilities now. And again, just using the side nav here. So our facilities page, our organization here has 3 facilities in it. Again, we built this capability. It's kind of first iteration, version 1 of the facility management. But we got a lot of feedback from different organizations, different stakeholders that expressed interest in potentially using ChemResponder to manage what at times is a really significant volume of information they're having to track for different sites that store chemicals. So again, that could be tier 2, required reporting under tier 2, or other state and local requirements. And so what we can do in ChemResponder in our organization here is we can add our facilities to the organization. I'm going to go into this Smith & Sons warehouse, for instance, and we can upload the chemical inventories that are present. There's all kinds of information that we can choose to add to those different chemicals. So, max amounts. Again, these are all kinds of these are things that you would see on a tier 2 report in terms of what would be required for meeting those tier 2 reports. We can upload documents for the facility, floor plans, points of contact. We have a history here of any data records that might have been collected for this facility. So if there were, some gas meter readings or something that you had to take there one time, we can capture those here so you can see them. So what we're going to see in a moment is when we get into events, we can display any of these facilities in the events that we create. So we have a geospatial view of those events alongside all the other event information that we're capturing. So again, this is kind of the version 1 of the facility capability. We've gotten a ton of early feedback on this, so we're exploring other potential possibly integrations or APIs if users are interested in being able to fetch tier 2 data, for instance, from some other place that they're storing it presently. We make that process more seamless in terms of getting it into ChemResponder. So I think we've got some exciting stuff to look forward to there. I'm going to jump over to the event space. And so I've got a staged event here where I've already thrown in some data for us. And an event in ChemResponder, when I talk about an event, typically the procedure would be that we create a unique event for a given response. So we have a fire or we have a large chemical spill. We create a unique event for that response. The create form is right here on this drop down. I can go to create an event. and select the sponsor. It's just got some fields here that are pretty simple to fill out. I just need a name for it, like a start date, hazard type. Again, Dante talked about how we've moved towards this division as this comprehensive CBRNResponder portal. So organizations can have access right now to either the chemical or the radiological hazard types. The bioresponder component of this is yet to come, but we're in concept development for that right now. So I can, in future, if your organization, or at the moment even, if your organization has both the chemical and the radiological hazard type, I could make this event both a rad and chem event and have access to all those data types. So there's a few fields. Again, I talked about the sharing mode. So we can choose to just start with this event, sharing it only internal to my organization. I could choose to share it at the outset, again, with those partners that we have at the organization level, those standing partners. I can share it with the entire ChemResponder network. I think relatively rare I'd do that, but it is an option here. So you'd be sharing in this case with all 500 organizations that are out there in the network. I can make it a private event, in which case only I see it, and I have to manually add people, even from my own organization, to the event. But if you only want a select group of folks to be able to see the event information, that's an option here. A few other things here that I'll point out that are going to be important when we start looking in particular at the map. With this track responders capability, so Dante did mention this on the slides, you can enable this capability at the event level, which is going to allow you to, well, it's going to allow users of that mobile application to opt in to allow tracking on their device when they're using the ChemResponder mobile app. So what that's going to allow you to do is see your responders where they are on scene. You can also display their tracking paths, so you can see the path that they've taken. You can display each of those responders as their own layers, basically. So again, this is an opt-in functionality. The user on the mobile device, they have to manually, allow tracking in the event they're working in. Where we obviously do that for privacy concerns. And then again, you have to allow the track responders capability at the event level here. We pick a location, and then we save the form. We've created our event. So once you kind of have some grounding in what these different fields are, creating the event is designed to be kind of a pretty quick process. It shouldn't take terribly long once you get a feel for it. We can always go back later once we've created the event and change these things if we want to as well. I'm going to cancel this one because, again, I've got an event already staged. So once I've created my event, I've got my dashboard here. I can see some tiles that might be useful. It obviously isn't an active response, but we'd be able to see, any active responders we've got. We have event access requests. So if other users are asking to get into the event, to see it, maybe they're from a neighboring jurisdiction and they're providing some support, they just need it for situational awareness, they can request access to the event, and I, as the event manager, can come in and adjudicate those requests. So that's our dashboard here. I'm going to go straight to the map. Obviously, there's a lot of robust capability on our map. I'm going to hide a couple things for the moment. Okay. Apologize there, I knocked my phone off the table. So I'm going to point out some of the iconography that you're seeing on our map here and walk this down a little bit for you. So I obviously see these different colorized records, these dots that are on our map. And these represent data records that our responders have uploaded. So this could be, for example, our firefighters, they've gone in, they're collecting multi-gas readings, for instance, and they're uploading those into the event space. So I'll click on this red one here, and this is just telling me that this is a chemical reading data type. I've got some information here in this little info box about who collected it, the equipment they're using, the readings. I'm going to click this details button and kick out the full info box. And so this is where we can see the totality of information about this record that was collected. And again, this could be our firefighter in this example, maybe using that mobile application we mentioned before to submit this record. They could also be taking advantage of the API. I'll try and touch on the API again in a little bit, but we developed these APIs. Again, TISWIG funded this project for us, where manufacturers of chemical detection equipment can write an application that interfaces with our APIs so that that equipment can automatically and autonomously telemeter data directly into a ChemResponder event. So there's no manual hand jamming. So MSA, they've integrated already just in the early months here, so their multi-gas meters can talk to ChemResponder. But again, we have our responders. They're getting the data from the field. We can see who collected it here. We can see, again, the equipment that they're using. So we can click right on the equipment record and go and view all kinds of details about that instrument. So again, going back to the org space where, again, we can upload all that instrumentation and manage it. So I can rapidly view details for that equipment if I need to. I'm going to come over here on the far right and look at the actual sensor readings here. So this is showing me, in this case, again, we have a multi-gas reading that we've taken. So we have a standard array of sensors, our carbon monoxide, our hydrogen sulfide, our LEL sensor, our oxygen sensor. And what I'm seeing is that, for whatever reason, looks like it's an oxygen-enriched environment. So I've got 31% oxygen, and that data record, again, we noted that it's colorized red. So Dante talked about on the slide, again, this thresholds concept we've got, where users can configure these thresholds, and I'll show you the menu in a moment. And you can say that, okay, if we get oxygen exceeding, 30.5%, then we want to consider that to be the very high threshold. So readings that exceed that level will colorize in this bright red color. The other readings on here, obviously, I've got this yellow one here, for instance. I'll go to details for that one. Look at my sensor readings. And in this instance, I can see that my LEL sensor is at 2%. So we've triggered that medium threshold, that yellow threshold for our LEL sensor. So that's going to colorize accordingly. So you get the idea here that this threshold concept provides data visualization. It makes it easier for us to understand, where something might be bad, where something is probably harmless. Other things I'm seeing on the data records, you notice that a couple of these records have this like red no smoking slash through them, and that means that we've rejected that record. So up here on the info box for the records, you see I've got these approve and reject buttons. And so if you have the data assessor role in the event, again, remember we have these different roles that can be given to individuals depending on their responsibilities. If I have the data assessor role, you will see these buttons that will allow you to approve or reject the reading. So this provides an opportunity for somebody, with the right expertise or who's the right authority to be able to say, okay, something's fishy with that record. It could have just been like a human error thing. Somebody misplaced a decimal point, or hey, we realize that this equipment hasn't been calibrated, in a year or whatever. We can't trust its output, so we're going to reject that record, whatever the case may be. So we can use this assessment capability to do some adjudication of the raw data that's coming in. And then when I'll go to partners here in a minute, and I'll just go there right now. So I'm going to go back to my side navigation and go to my partners page. So again, we have these partners. Jesus. Sorry, I keep knocking my phone or knocking my headphones out. I'm gesturing too much in my excitement. So we've got these partners that we can add to the event ad hoc. So again, we have the org level partners, those standing partners that we can bring down into the event when we create it, if we so choose. But we can add additional partners or take them away as we see fit. And we can set their participation types according to what we think they need to be able to do. So I can see here this demo chem org has full participant rights, but the simulated police department has just view only. And then the simulated state local organization has view-only approved data. And so I wanted to mention this because of the discussion around the assessment capability. So if you set an organization to view only approved data, they will only see, flip back to the map, they will only see those records, those data, that raw data that has been approved on the event. So these records that have been rejected or those that are still pending assessment, for those responders with that view only approved data permission, they won't see those records at all. So you might have, some agency that, just needs to be able to see the event map for situational awareness, but maybe they don't have some of the expertise to interpret some of the data to understand what is reliable, what's not, or you just have other reasons why you want kind of a validation check on any raw data coming in before certain parties can view it. That's a really handy thing, that view only approved data feature. You can also do that same thing for individual responders on the event in addition to entire organizations. All right. So we've got, again, different data types that we can collect in our event. We looked a little bit at multi-gas readings here. This record I'm clicking on, the gray one, is a chemical spectrum. And so we can click on details for our chemical spectrum. So if I'm doing some spectroscopy out there, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I'm looking at, we have this data type for that purpose. So what you see here is I've got, again, the same sort of details tab that I looked at before for my multi-gas: who collected it, when they collected it, what instrument did they use, etc. I've got some other fields like this data file. So in the case of spectroscopy, if you've got an instrument that will export the actual spectrum in a CSV or a PDF or an SPC file, and you can park that on the record. You can download it right off of ChemResponder if you want to take it and put it into some other analytical software. This can we've gotten feedback from users that they think that this could be kind of a means to be able to do that sharing of spectral data. So we've got this. We've got some other questions here that the user can fill out at the time that they collect it. So these would be questions of interest for some analyst who's looking at this and trying to figure out what the substance might be. So we're asking, what's the physical state? Is it in a container? What color is the container? What color is the substance? And so on. And then on the tab up here, we've also got some other things that I'll point to. So we've got this attachments tab. Now, attachments can be included on any data type. So whether it's a multi-gas reading or a spectrum like we have here, or other data types, they could be pictures. So from the mobile application, you can take a picture and include it with the data record that you're submitting. So in this case, again, maybe we have like a white powder. We take a picture of it. We include that with the record that we submit. Again, it looks like we have an SPC file that we're including here as well. So that contains the actual spectrum. We might be able to put that into some other program for further analysis. And then finally, if we've of course got the actual chemicals with whatever confidence level they've got that we can also put on here. So whatever our instrument is telling us it might be, chemical names with their associated confidence levels, we have a space for those too. All right. Couple more things I'll point out on the event map, and then I'll point to a couple other things in this event space as we start to wind down. But again, we talked earlier about facilities, so I can upload facilities into the org space. I can display those in events that I create. So I clicked on my facility icon, and again, it's just telling me the name of the facility. It's telling me, whether or not it's subject to Tier 2 requirements. I'll click on details here. And I've got just, again, some basic information about this site. I can look at the chemicals that are stored there. It looks like in this case we have some diesel fuels. And if there were readings that were collected at this site, we can view those as well. Now, I'm going to show a cool feature that we're pretty proud of that, and that I'm excited about, that was recently developed. So we just implemented this within the last 7-8 months. So we have this indoor data collection capability too. What you're looking at on the screen is a floor plan that a user has uploaded. You can see we can kind of drag it around on the screen here. So users can upload floor plans. It can just be kind of standard image file types like a JPEG, and we can display it on our map here, and we can plot actual records right on the floor plan. So if we're trying to do some operation in an enclosed space, we want to use this feature, we can use that again to plot the ground truth data that we're getting in the closed environment. So again, I can click on each of these records and do all the same stuff that I was showing before. Again, now it's just displayed on my indoor floor plan here. So yeah, that's a really nice feature. You can also do this from the mobile application. So those floor plans that we upload for our facilities, that user at the mobile application level, they can go in, they can display this floor plan on their mobile app screen, and they can plot data points as they need to on it, and then those will, of course, come into the space here. Okay, GIS files. So you can upload your own GIS files using this interface, KML, KMZ, shapefiles. So if you're using something like the Wiser application, you can export those products from Wiser as a KML, and you can upload them here. That upload process is pretty easy. There's just this upload button. I click that. I go in. Is it a KML file? Is it a shapefile? It's a KML file. I give it a name, a model, and then I go in and pick my file from my computer. I click upload, and I'm good to go. I'll display it on my map here. So some applications out there, like Wiser, like Aloha, they can be very useful, obviously, for a lot of HAZMAT teams. But the sharing part of this becomes a little difficult because, again, Aloha just exists only on your machine. So if you create a model and you want, some neighboring jurisdiction or somebody who's, already on scene to be able to see it, short of emailing it to them, there's no geospatial kind of shared cloud-hosted element to Aloha, but you can take that product you make, again, in something like Aloha, upload it here, and I can view it here. Again, anybody that's on the event, they can view it, and we see it alongside all the other event information that we're working with. So that's a nice feature. Other things, we've got, again, all kinds of filtering capabilities that you can take advantage of for viewing specific chemicals, only displaying data that was submitted by particular organizations or certain field teams or certain people, all kinds of different layering we can do as well. So, you can get into those weeds as you start to explore the system for yourself. A couple other menus here that I'll just point to, in addition to what we've seen here on the map. So again, I mentioned thresholds, so I'll show those real quick. I'm just using my side nav to come down here to my thresholds. And I've got my default chemical reading thresholds, and I'll click in here. And you can see the table at the bottom. Again, this is where I can go in and configure these thresholds for myself. So only somebody who has the event manager permission can do this. So you need the highest level permission in the event to be able to change these. But you can see here that I can go to edit. And again, I can edit the upper limits for these different thresholds for these different types of sensors for what I might collect in the event. You can add other thresholds. So maybe I want to add one for a chlorine sensor. You can add additional thresholds here like that. You can change the labels as well for the different threshold names. So if we don't want to use very low, you can change it to whatever you think might be appropriate. We can, in addition to viewing our data on the map, of course, in the geospatial environment, we can also view it in tables. So I'll click my data drop-down menu, and I can go in and look at, so we looked at spectra before, so my chemical spectra. And I've got just 2 records for this event for Spectra. This is the one that I was looking at earlier. So again, we can see that in the table format here. There's an expand details option. So I think typically, the use case that we see for viewing in tables, I think most often I've seen this for folks who are trying to assess data. I think that might be even more true on the RAD side of things, where there's a ton of data coming in. You want to view it in the table format. They can take advantage of this expand details option over here, look at the information, and use these approve and reject buttons. But obviously, lots of different diverse uses you might have for table viewing. You can also do bulk assessment from the table. So I can just choose to approve or choose to reject all the records that I've filtered the table to. We've got a ton of different filtering options that you can use here in the table. And again, that will basically be the same interface for no matter what data type that you're working with. So here are my chemical readings. These individual records are obviously, again, from the different sensors are displaying over here. I can go in and, again, view details, more details for each of these readings that I'm collecting. We'll get an assessment history here, so you can see the history of all assessment actions that have been taken for that record. Okay. Couple of things I'll point out, again, as we start to wind down. The resources is a good thing to be aware of. So I can come up here to the ribbon bar, click resources, and this is a resource library where I have this document section where we have user manuals and job aids. So, if you're trying to think back to what I was talking about for event management and how to add responders and all this kind of stuff that we went through, you can come here and there's all kinds of job aids that you can get into to refresh yourself. We always provide them in Word doc form, so if people want to be able to take them and cut and paste stuff into other documentation that they're using, or make their own notes in the job aid itself, you can do so. So job aids, we've got training videos that are available here too, in the video section below. The HAZMAT incident database. So we developed this. This is still kind of in its version 1, but we got feedback when we were writing the original requirements for ChemResponder from New York Fire Department in particular. We do a lot of work with them. They're a power user for RAD Responder, have been for years. They're starting to take up ChemResponder as well. And they said, we do some work with our city's health department, obviously. And one year they came to us and they were asking if they could provide data on how many carbon monoxide calls, or just how many HAZMAT calls more broadly, they made to this particular section of the city where they had some kind of public health concerns, maybe cancer cluster. And the fire department kind of, they didn't necessarily have an easy way to answer that question. And so, they said if we were to, standardize our use of ChemResponder in the department, and our data is going here, you could just run a query and say, all right, in this geography, how many CO calls did we make in the month of February in 2020? There's all kinds of, different queries you could set up, obviously. So that's what we built this as a way to try and meet that type of a need. And so you can come in and play around with it. Again, this is where you can make queries. You can say, okay, again, I want to pick a certain geography. So here in New York, and between such and such date range, maybe again, April 1 to yesterday, that our demo chem organization collected, and you could even go down to specific chemicals. Again, I could say carbon monoxide. And you can say within, 5 miles of the point that I just dropped. So return me all the records that meet those criteria. And again, you can do a kind of a lot of powerful searching here. I don't think this is going to return anything, but So again, play around with it, beat it up. Very interested in folks' feedback on this. If they think could be of use or directions we can take this. We're very responsive to user feedback from the community. So we're interested to hear from you. Last thing I'll note is just this contact tab up here. So we've got a contact tab. If you got a question, you got input, feedback for us, make use of that. It goes to our whole team, and we do respond to those things. So let us know what you need. Let us know what's helpful, what's working, and what's not. We're at the top of our time, I think. So I'm going to hand it back to Rick. Any closing comments?
Thank you very much, Sean. One quick thing, can you guys address the registration process and who can register, what limitations there might be as far as an individual, or because it asks you for the sponsoring agency, and if you don't have a sponsoring agency, then it's going to list FEMA CBRN division. Can you just talk to that for a second?
Definitely. So the tool is for primarily first responders, groups who have some stake in chemical incident response. So if you kind of, that's a fairly broad definition, but if you meet that criteria, you can get an account, you can get an organization for yourself. For that, again, for that sponsoring agency, if you know of a neighboring organization or something that can act as your initial sponsor, that's great. But again, if you don't have that, not a big deal. Again, just put FEMA CBRN as the form says, and then we'll adjudicate your account. If we see that, again, you have a legitimate need to be in the system. Again, you are a stakeholder that's in this space, connected to this space in some way or another. We'll be able to stand up your organization. And Dante, did you have anything to add to that?
No. And so, Sean, can you explain a little so it's not confusing? If you're the first one in from your agency, who the sponsor, it would be the agency you're coming in as, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So when you create a new organization, so at the bottom of the form, and again, for context for folks, what I'm talking about is the request an account form. So when you go to ChemResponder.net, you click request an account in the upper right. You get to the bottom of the form. If you are a new organization, so your fire department or your state health agency or whatever, or your county health agency, you don't have an organization in ChemResponder yet, and you want to create a new organization in ChemResponder for your agency, then at the bottom of that form, it'll ask, you'll select request a new organization, and then you'll put your organization's information in the details part. But then one of the questions that's asked is sponsorship details. So it's asking you to select an organization that already exists in ChemResponder who can validate that, yes, this agency has a need to be in this site. And so that's what we're talking about when we're referencing the sponsorship stuff. So again, if you don't know of other orgs that are on this thing who can kind of vouch for you, so to speak, again, just select FEMA CBRN, and that request will route to our support team, and we can run it past Dante as needed, and it's generally not a problem. We can just we'll stand up your account at that point.
Great, thank you. Next, training videos. There's a lot of training videos on YouTube. Are those training videos through you all, or are those individuals?
Yeah, good question. So I think if I understand correctly, we do have a YouTube channel for CBRNResponder. So yes, if you go to YouTube and you find our channel, we do upload our videos there. Again, we always take those videos in YouTube and we also put them in the resource library here. Now, if you're just looking at like, I don't know, maybe I should go in and do a search. I don't know if other folks just, random people are creating training videos for ChemResponder and uploading them into YouTube. If they're not from our official channel, then I can't vouch for them. But again, a good bet is to reference our video section here. But again, you can also use our YouTube channel for CBRNResponder and get to those resources.
Great, very good, thank you. That's a good, excellent overview. So next year, because of the COVID this year, these two individuals were not able to come to the conference, but I've already put the arm on them and they both agreed that they would come next year. And correct me if I'm wrong, people will be able to bring a tablet, a phone, a laptop, come to the class and actually get hands-on experience with the experts. Is that correct?
Yeah, so depending on the amount of time allotted for the session, we like to get folks, like you said, hands-on into the system, using it, maybe come up with a hypothetical event scenario where we give some made-up data points to enter into the mobile app so they can then see how it displays on the web portion. So yeah, we try to tie in IMAC and modeling and some other things. So it's a lot more robust and hands-on, as you said.
Excellent. Great. I know we went a little over, but I appreciate you guys sticking with us here. We've got some other webinars that are on our website, emerysafety.com, that were featured at the conference, which they've agreed to do webinars. And next year, the dates are, the pre-conference is April 29th, and the conference itself is April 30th and May 1st, where you'll be able to see Dante and Sean in action. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it very much. It was a great presentation. That concludes
Thanks for the opportunity
today.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.